I wasn't supposed to hesitate. Not over something as simple as flowers. It was just a bouquet. Just a small, predictable gesture for a relationship that had slowly become exactly that, predictable. Safe. Expected. The kind of love that looks perfect from the outside but feels oddly quiet on the inside. Still, I stood outside the shop longer than I needed to. The glass door reflected a version of me I barely questioned anymore. Soft smile, neat outfit, a life that made sense. A boyfriend who texted good morning every day. Plans for the future that sounded stable. Reasonable. Right. I pushed the door open. A soft bell chimed above me, and the scent hit instantly, roses, lilies, something fresh and green. It wrapped around me like a memory I couldn't place. Hi, welcome in. I looked up. And for a moment, everything paused. She stood behind the counter, sleeves rolled up slightly, hands gently adjusting a bouquet like it mattered more than anything else in the world. There was something calm about her. Not loud. Not trying. Just present. Her eyes met mine. And then she smiled. Not the kind of smile people give customers. Not rehearsed. Not polite. It was warm. Unexpected. Like she saw me, not just another person walking in to buy flowers for someone else. Looking for something special? She asked. I blinked, realizing I hadn't answered yet. Yeah, I glanced around quickly, trying to remember why I was there. It's for my boyfriend. The word felt heavier than usual. Her smile didn't disappear, but it changed, just slightly. Softer. Quieter. Okay, she nodded. What kind of flowers does he like? I opened my mouth. And then, nothing. I didn't know. I stood there, suddenly aware of how strange that was. We had been together for over a year, and yet I didn't know what flowers he liked. Or if he liked them at all. I'm not sure, I admitted, a small, awkward laugh escaping. She tilted her head, studying me, not in a judgmental way, but like she was trying to understand something deeper than my answer. That's okay, she said gently. Maybe we can figure it out together. And for some reason, I felt like she wasn't talking about the flowers anymore. She stepped out from behind the counter, moving with an ease that made the space feel smaller, warmer. I'm Sarah, by the way, she said, reaching for a bundle of white tulips. Her voice was soft, but it carried something steady, like she wasn't in a rush to fill silence. I hesitated for half a second. Minahill. She repeated my name like it meant something. Minahill. I don't know why, but the way she said it made my chest feel lighter. So, Sarah continued, gently trimming the stems, tell me about him. I leaned against the counter, watching her hands move. He's good. Really good. It sounded right. It was right. But it also sounded rehearsed. She glanced up briefly, catching something in my tone. That's a safe answer. I blinked. What do you mean? She shrugged lightly, a faint smile playing on her lips. Most people start with good. It usually means they're still figuring out how they actually feel. Her words landed a little too close. I know how I feel, I said quickly. Do I? She didn't argue. Just nodded, like she respected the answer, even if she didn't fully believe it. Okay, she said, picking up a few soft pink roses this time. Then let me ask it differently. When you think about him, what's the first thing you feel? I opened my mouth again. and paused. Because the answer didn't come as easily as it should have. Comfort, maybe. Familiarity. Routine. But none of those felt like the right answer to say out loud. I don't know, I admitted quietly. Sarah's hand slowed, but she didn't look surprised. That's okay too, she said. Feelings aren't always loud. Sometimes they fade so gradually, you don't notice until someone asks you to name them. I swallowed, suddenly aware of the silence between us, not awkward, but heavy with something I couldn't quite define. And flowers help with that? I asked, trying to lighten the moment. She smiled again, a little brighter this time. Not really. But choosing them does. I raised an eyebrow. How? Because you can't fake what you're drawn to, she said simply. You either feel it, or you don't. Her eyes met mine again. And this time, I didn't look away first. Something about her presence made everything feel sharper. Clearer. Like the questions I'd been ignoring were suddenly standing right in front of me. So, she said softly, holding up two different bouquets. Which one feels right? I looked at the flowers. Then at her. And for a strange, confusing moment, I wasn't sure what I was choosing anymore. I stared at the two bouquets in her hands. One was neat. Structured. Red roses, perfectly arranged, classic, safe, almost, expected. The other was softer. A mix of wildflowers, lavender, pale pinks, tiny white blossoms that didn't try too hard to be noticed. Most people go for the roses, Sarah said, almost casually. They're reliable. I nodded slowly. Reliable. That word again. My eyes lingered on the roses for a moment longer than necessary. They made sense. They fit the occasion. They were what a girlfriend was supposed to buy for her boyfriend. So why did they feel wrong? And the other one? I asked, gesturing toward the wildflowers. Sarah glanced down at them, a small smile forming like she already knew what I was going to say next. They're a little unpredictable, she said. Not everyone understands them. I let out a quiet breath, my fingers brushing lightly against the delicate petals. They felt real. Not perfect. Not uniform. But alive. I think I like these, I said softly. Sarah didn't look surprised. Yeah, she murmured. I thought you might. There was no judgment in her tone. No hidden meaning. And yet, it felt like she saw right through me. I mean, it's not that the roses aren't nice, I added quickly, suddenly feeling the need to justify myself. They're just a bit too much. Too much, she echoed, raising an eyebrow slightly. I nodded. Too obvious. Like they're trying to prove something. Sarah's lips curved into a knowing smile. And the wildflowers aren't? I shook my head. No. They just exist. You either like them or you don't. She held my gaze for a second longer than usual. Exactly. The word lingered between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. And then she carefully began wrapping the wildflowers in soft brown paper, tying them with a simple ribbon. Her movements were slow, intentional, like she was giving the bouquet more care than necessary. Or maybe, just enough. Do you always help people figure things out like this? I asked, watching her. She let out a small laugh. No. Just when they look like they need it. I raised an eyebrow. And I look like I need help? She glanced up, her expression gentle but honest. You look like you're trying to convince yourself of something. The truth in her words hit harder than I expected. I looked away, suddenly focused on the counter, the flowers, anything but her eyes. Maybe I am, I admitted under my breath. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she placed the finished bouquet in front of me, her fingers brushing mine for the briefest second as she let go. And somehow, that tiny, accidental touch felt louder than everything we'd said so far. I should have pulled my hand back. It was nothing. Just a brief touch. The kind that happens 100 times a day without meaning anything. But this one did. And I didn't understand why. Sorry, Sarah said softly, though her voice didn't sound like she regretted it. It's okay, I replied quickly, maybe too quickly. Our hands lingered for a fraction longer before I finally stepped back, wrapping my fingers around the bouquet like I needed something to ground me. The air felt different now. Heavier. Warmer. So, I cleared my throat, forcing a small smile. How much do I owe you? She told me the price, but I barely registered it. I reached into my bag, pulling out cash, trying to focus on something normal, something that made sense. This was normal. I was buying flowers for my boyfriend. That's all this was. Right? Is it for something special? She asked as she handed me the change. I hesitated. Not really, I said. Just because. She tilted her head slightly. Those are usually the most meaningful ones. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I agreed. Or maybe I did. I'm sure he'll like them, she added. Something about the way she said it made me pause. Not doubtful. Not sarcastic. Just neutral. Like she wasn't trying to convince me. Yeah, I said, but the word felt uncertain. I'm sure he will. Silence settled between us again, softer this time. Comfortable. And that scared me a little. Because it shouldn't feel this easy to stand here, talking to someone I had just met, while holding flowers meant for someone else. I glanced toward the door. I should leave. I needed to leave. But my feet didn't move. Do you ever, I started, then stopped myself. Sarah waited, her expression open, patient. Do I ever what? She asked gently. I let out a quiet breath, debating whether I should even say it. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right? I said slowly, choosing each word carefully, but something still feels off? Her gaze softened instantly. Yeah, she said. More often than people admit. I nodded, my grip tightening slightly around the bouquet. It's weird, I continued. Because nothing's wrong. He's good to me. He cares. I should be happy. Should be, she repeated quietly. I looked up at her, my chest tightening at the question. Yeah, I whispered. There it was again. That word. Should. Sarah stepped a little closer, not enough to cross a line, but enough that I could feel her presence more clearly. Feelings don't really follow should, she said. They just are. I swallowed. Because deep down, I knew she was right. And that terrified me. I glanced at the flowers in my hands again. And for the first time since I walked in, they didn't feel like they belonged to him anymore. I walked out of the shop, but something in me stayed behind. The bell chimed softly as the door closed, and the world outside felt louder than before, cars passing, people talking, life moving like nothing had changed. But something had. I looked down at the bouquet in my hands. The wildflowers. They didn't feel like a gift anymore. They felt like a question. I started walking, my steps slow, almost uncertain. My boyfriend's apartment was only a few blocks away. I had made this walk so many times before, it was practically muscle memory. But today, it felt unfamiliar. Every step came with a thought I couldn't ignore anymore. What do you feel when you think about him? Sarah's voice echoed in my mind. Comfort. Routine. Familiarity. But not excitement. Not warmth. Not that quiet, undeniable pull I had felt standing across the counter from her. I stopped mid-step. My chest tightened. No, I whispered to myself, shaking my head slightly. This is stupid. It had to be. I couldn't just question everything because of one conversation. Because of one smile. That didn't make sense. I forced myself to keep walking. By the time I reached his building, my thoughts were louder than ever. I stood outside for a moment, staring at the door, trying to settle the storm inside me. This was my life. This was what I chose. I rang the bell. A few seconds later, the door opened, and there he was, smiling, relaxed, exactly the way he always was when he saw me. Hey, he said, pulling me into a quick hug. You didn't have to come all the way here. I smiled back, automatically. I was nearby, I lied. He stepped aside, letting me in. What's that? I held up the bouquet. For you. His eyebrows lifted slightly, surprised. Flowers? I nodded. He took them from me, turning them in his hands like he wasn't quite sure what to do next. There, nice, he said. Nice. That was it. No spark. No reaction. Just, nice. And suddenly, everything inside me went quiet. Not peaceful. Empty. Do you like them? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Yeah, of course, he said quickly. It's just, I've never really been into flowers, you know? I nodded slowly. Of course. I didn't know. Because I had never asked. Because it had never mattered. Or maybe, because I had never felt the need to know. That's okay, I said softly. And in that moment, I realized something that felt both obvious and heartbreaking at the same time. It wasn't just the flowers. It was us. We were nice. And somehow, that didn't feel like enough anymore. We sat on the couch like we always did. Same spot. Same distance. Same quiet TV playing something neither of us was really watching. Everything looked normal. But it didn't feel normal anymore. He placed the flowers on the table without a second glance, already reaching for the remote. Do you want something to eat? He asked casually, eyes still on the screen. Not really, I replied. He nodded. Okay. That was it. No follow-up. No curiosity. No why not? And for the first time, that simplicity felt loud. I watched him for a moment, really watched him, not the version of him I had grown used to, but the person sitting right in front of me. He was kind. He was easy to be around. He never made things complicated. And maybe that was the problem. Can I ask you something? I said, my voice quieter than I expected. He glanced at me briefly. Yeah, of course. I hesitated. Because once I said it out loud, I wouldn't be able to pretend anymore. Are you happy? I asked. He frowned slightly, caught off guard. What kind of question is that? I don't know, I said honestly. Just answer it. He leaned back, thinking for a second. Yeah, he said finally. I mean, yeah. Things are good. We're good. We're good. There it was again. Good. Safe. Predictable. I nodded slowly, my gaze drifting to the flower sitting untouched on the table. And you? He asked. Are you happy? The question hung in the air longer than it should have. I opened my mouth. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know how to lie. I think I should be, I said carefully. He gave a small laugh. That doesn't sound like an answer. It's the only one I have, I replied. He studied me for a moment, his expression shifting slightly, confusion, maybe even concern. Did something happen? He asked. Yes. But not in the way he meant. No, I said softly. Nothing happened. And that was the truth. Nothing had happened. No fights. No betrayal. No big moment to point to. Just a quiet realization that had been building for longer than I wanted to admit. I paused, searching for the right words. Do you ever feel like something's missing? He frowned again, clearly not expecting this kind of conversation. Missing? He repeated. Like what? I looked at him. At us. At feeling, I said quietly. He didn't answer right away. And in that silence, I think we both understood something neither of us wanted to say out loud. We didn't argue. That's the strange part. There was no dramatic ending, no raised voices, no breaking point you could point to and say that's where it all fell apart. It just unraveled. Quietly. Honestly. I don't think this is working anymore, I said, my voice steady despite everything I was feeling. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was searching for something to hold on to. Yeah, he admitted softly. I think I felt that too. And just like that, it was over. No anger. No blame. Just two people who realized they had been holding on to something that wasn't really there anymore. I left his apartment lighter than I expected. Not happy. Not sad. Just clear. For the first time in a long time, my thoughts weren't tangled in shoulds and expectations. They were quiet. And in that quiet, there was only one thing I could think about. Her. The bell chimed again as I pushed open the flower shop door. Sarah looked up instantly, like she had been expecting me, though that didn't make any sense. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. And there it was again. That same smile. The one that had stayed with me long after I left. You're back, she said gently. I nodded, stepping inside, my heart beating just a little faster than usual. Yeah, I said. I needed to return something. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, a hint of amusement in her eyes. The flowers? I shook my head. No, I said softly. The lie. Something shifted in her expression, not surprise, not confusion, just understanding. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. Instead, she stepped a little closer, her presence as calm as it had been the first time. And what are you looking for now? She asked. The question felt different this time. Not about someone else. Not about what I was supposed to feel. Just me. I took a breath, my fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the counter, the same spot where everything had started. And then I looked at her. Really looked at her. I don't know yet, I admitted. Her smile softened. That's a good place to start. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. No expectations. No labels. No pressure to have everything figured out. Just a feeling. New. Uncertain. But real. Can I ask you something? I said, my voice quieter now. She nodded. Yeah. I hesitated for half a second, then let the question fall naturally between us. Do you want to get coffee sometime? There was a brief pause. Not awkward. Just enough to make my heart race. And then, I'd like that, she said. Simple. Honest. And somehow, it felt like the beginning of something I had never allowed myself to imagine before. As she turned to grab her keys, I glanced around the shop one last time, the flowers, the soft light, the place where everything had quietly changed. I walked in to buy something for someone else. But I walked out. Finally choosing something for myself.